and order every time. That's us.
Versus.
And what an ugly thing to say.
The world.
I got my own radio show, right? It's pretty cool. And every time I accomplish something, I'm like, wow, I've made it. Like, this is my dream. This is, what else do I need to do? And then I look at what Ariel Helwani's doing, and I realize that what a flea I am. He joins me now. He is the best in the world at Ariel Helwani. He's on the Mitsubishi Electric Heating Hotline and, of course, MMAfighting.com or just anywhere where guys are wearing 4-ounce gloves and knocking each other out. Ariel, great to hear from you, bud. Thank you for making time. I knew you were heartbroken when the Nats got bounced out of the playoffs this year in the first round.
This is like when I was a youngster, I used to watch WWF. It was called Maple Leaf Wrestling every Saturday afternoon at 12 o'clock, and it would be like Brutus Beefcake versus Joe Blow from Mississippi, squash matches. So
Yeah.
This is me kind of giving back to the industry and, having a go with a member of the job squad. How are you?
I should be carrying around a foam head and telling everybody what they need. I absolutely agree. Well, first of all, congrats. You were all over the story, and it's one of the bigger stories over the weekend, regardless of sport. You're I don't know how friendly you are, but you're definitely friendly with CM Punk. Did you have any idea this was in the works? Is this something that caught everybody off guard? It certainly caught me off guard.
Yes. One of the things I hate the most about media is when someone says after the fact, oh, I had heard about this 3 weeks ago, and, that just drives me nuts. So I haven't said that, but if you're asking me, yeah, I did know it was in the works, and, sometimes you're told things off the record, and you have to keep it that way.
Okay. I was fired up, you know that. I think that you're excited about it, but you're professional. When you deal with these people, you deal with these hardcores of this sport, and again, I deal with hardcores of every sport on this show. They're the most annoying people on the planet. They complain that people don't talk about their sport, and then when something happens, it's going to garner them an enormous amount of mainstream attention. They bitch and moan and complain about that and say the sanctity of the sport's been ruined. At the end of the day, man, when I look at this, it's entertainment. This is completely entertaining to me, and it's going to get an S-load of new eyes on the sport. This is a good thing, right, Ariel? This isn't a bad thing the UFC did.
It's 100% a good thing. I mean, I think we can sit here and talk about this topic and debate it for hours. It's a really fun topic to debate for many reasons, but I am 100% in the camp that this is a good thing. I mean, some of the things that come to mind and some of the things that have been said to me have been, well, he's taking someone's spot. Well, he's not taking someone's spot. Next year there's going to be around 500 UFC fights taking place. 50 events, 10 fights per card. By the way, why do I hear myself back? It's very hard to actually construct a sentence when you hear an echo.
We'll try to work on it. You sound great on the air, bud, but we'll try to work on it.
Okay. My mistake. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to break down the fourth wall there. It's gone, by the way, so that's great. So anyway, there's 500 fights next year, right? So this isn't a situation where they had X amount of slots and there's a roster cap that they can't exceed. If anything, it's a situation where two people are going to get a job when they weren't going to get a job. CM Punk and the guy who's going to fight who probably wasn't or isn't in the UFC right now. Like I said, there are 500 fights scheduled approximately for next year. If you don't like this one fight that will probably take place around this time next year, don't watch this one fight. But I can guarantee you that this one fight is going to garner as much attention as any fight that's supposed to take place next year. This isn't like anything we've ever seen. This isn't Brock Lesnar. This isn't, Kurt Angle trying for, a shot in UFC. This isn't Herschel Walker. The closest thing I could think of is it's maybe Michael Jordan trying out for baseball. This is a guy who had no business trying out for baseball, and his experience was Little League. He was in the AAA system. Obviously, the UFC is in AAA. He didn't make it, but he didn't take anyone's spot, and he got there because he's privileged. CM Punk would have fought anywhere else if the UFC said no. But if the UFC is going to say yes, then, why not take the shot? So if you're going to begrudge anyone, you can maybe begrudge the UFC and say that maybe 3-4 years ago they never even looked at this, which is probably accurate. But don't begrudge CM Punk, who's just taken an opportunity and has always wanted to do this and has talked openly about wanting to do this for quite some time.
And it's not like, I mean, he's trained in this stuff and drilled in this stuff his whole life, and he's always been completely respectful of the athletes and talked about that and, you know, tried to do things with Chael Sonnen that was shot down during his time with professional wrestling. I just think that it's a guy that gets it, and it's only going to help. How important in your mind is the first opponent? The name that's being thrown around everywhere is Joseph David Frank, who, of course, the Green Power Ranger. Everybody freaks out about that. I got a chance to see him fight at UWC a few years back. I thought he was very entertaining. Is that the guy they're leaning towards right now? Do we have any inclination of who he's going to lock up with?
No, we don't have an inclination, and I say it's 100% a good thing right now because it is 100% a good thing right now, but we can't fully give this story a grade until it's all said and done, until that first fight takes place. Why? Because there's a lot of things that need to happen, and they could get messed up. I mean, I'll be honest. I would have done the announcement a little differently. I wouldn't have done it on pay-per-view where you have a pretty small audience. If you're going to do it on broadcast TV, I would have done it this weekend on Fox when you have at least 2.5 million people watching as opposed to, 400,000 people watching on pay-per-view. So it wasn't all rosy, but the idea of this guy coming into the UFC right now, given the circumstances, given the state of the business, given the year that they just had, I think is good. Now, where do they go from here? Well, you can't just put him in there against some kind of scrub. Why? Because if he loses, and it's very possible that he can lose, you need someone who can at least take the baton and run with it. You need someone with some kind of skill, charisma, et cetera, et cetera. Also, I feel as though there needs to be a camera on this guy starting yesterday. From the moment he signed that contract, there needs to be a camera on this guy. And in particularly now, as he finds out where he's going to train, what he's going to do with his private life, is he going to move from Chicago, the ups and downs, the whole process of getting an opponent. This is all fascinating, and it should be on Fox. If not Fox Sports 1, if not Fight Pass. So I want to see how they handle it from here. But right now, I have no problem with the idea of CM Punk getting a UFC fight because, let's be honest, the idea of being quote-unquote UFC caliber has completely changed. We see guys, tough China, who have no business, a couple of years ago being in the UFC. Things have changed. The times have changed. And they're evolving with the times. They're trying to bring in someone who will, capture audiences like you. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Tell me if I'm crazy here. When Lesnar's in there and he's getting the wrestling fans, whoever the hell it is, sports fans, and they're buying pay-per-views, and the pay-per-views are going up, 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 doesn't that translate into more money for everybody? I mean, when there's more eyes on the sport, doesn't that mean better money situations for all parties involved? And if that's the case, and I'm a hardcore mixed martial arts fan, I think I'm happy about that because the training is so expensive, because insurance is crazy, because of all the things that go along with this. Just by the presence of Phil Brooks, CM Punk being there, isn't the rising tide going to raise all ships?
Another thing, and more to that point, it's like perhaps I am a little biased because I know this guy, and I know, and you know him as well, because this is a very prideful person. This is a guy who is not going to go in there to embarrass himself. This is a guy who's not going to go in there to embarrass the sport. He didn't just start watching UFC yesterday. I know he watches everything. He's a diehard fan. He watches more MMA, and I'm not just talking UFC. He watches everything from Bellator to World Series of Fighting, Metamoris, Jiu-Jitsu. He watches it all. He consumes more MMA than pro wrestling these days. He's a huge fan, and that obviously it takes a lot more than just being a huge fan, but you need to have an appreciation for the sport if you're actually going to go in there and have respect for the sport and respect for yourself. MMA is a lot like pro wrestling as far as the hardcore fan bases are concerned. They're always looking for things to complain about. I find that the complaints about this to be incredibly funny. I mean, I love the people who are calling him, who are adamant on calling him Phil Brooks. I mean, these are the same people who were calling Kimbo Slice. That wasn't his real name, by the way. It was Kevin Ferguson. But because he's a pro wrestler, they can't dare call him CM Punk. Oh, no, we can't call him CM Punk. No, this is horrible for the sport. Again, these are the same people who have been complaining all year long that the UFC is watered down, that there aren't big events, that the fights don't feel special. And now there's a fight and a fighter that people actually are caring about and talking about who transcends MMA to sports to wrestling to football. These audiences are coming in, and now we have a problem with it. If you don't like this one fight, guess what? There's going to be 499 others at least next year that you can bitch about. Just don't talk about it. And guess what? Those same media members are going to be very happy to come on your show and every other show to talk about this if the opportunity arises.
That's a great point. One last one for you. It's at Ariel Helwani. You got to be following him if you have any passing interest in combat sports, and of course MMAfighting.com. I listened to the entire interview. Or watched the entire interview you did with him. 36. You asked him a great question. You said you plan on fighting until you're 40, and he said, "Yeah, that's something he's looking like doing." I mean, he's got to win some fights, right? He's not going to go there, lose 2-3 fights in a row, and be like, "Yeah, I'm going to continue to take another contract, fight for another 2 or 3 years." How much success do you think Punk needs to have in order to keep the UFC as his home?
You know what I love about it is, Dana White told me in the post-fight show, he said, I'm skeptical. And sometimes you could tell when a promoter isn't telling you the truth. Like, he seems very genuine. Yes, I said to him, what do you say to all those people who say he's 0-0, he has no background, he has no business being there? I'm like, yeah. He said, yeah, you're kind of right. I am skeptical. But, again, they felt like they needed to capitalize on that first fight. So, obviously, he can't embarrass himself. He's got, in my opinion, at least 2 fights under his belt right now. He's got the first fight, which is obviously going to happen if all goes well. If he loses that fight and looks good and looks respectable and is able to hang in there, he'll get one more, in my opinion. But again, everything he has told me and everything everyone else has told me, this is a guy who's not looking to go in there, steal someone's spot, and just get one shot and walk away. He actually wants to make a go of this. Every pro wrestler that I've talked to since becoming an MMA journalist, I always ask him this question. If the UFC was as popular back then when you started your career as it is today, would you have done that as opposed to this? Booker T, Undertaker, CM Punk, The Rock, Stone Cold, I've asked them all. They've all said yes. This is one guy who recognizes that and is saying, you know what, my time is almost up. I'm going to go for this. And how can you hate on that?
Somehow it's less dangerous. I mean, it is brutal sometimes as it is inside the octagon. It seems way less dangerous and of a grind than professional wrestling. Ariel, great stuff. Congrats on breaking it. Everybody took the cue from you. It's MMAfighting.com. It's at Ariel Helwani. Give him a follow. Always appreciate the time, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. There he goes. I'm glad he's like-minded. I just think it's tremendous, and I think it's going to sell a lot of pay-per-views to people that normally would not buy them. Oh, I see a thick-lipped individual that just walked through the door. We'll talk some college foosball with him and Bode Mode, and perhaps on the latest hair loss products. We can get into all of that at 3:30. It's Chad Dukes versus the World.